And so we close out yet another year. I hope Christmas 2024 and New Year 25 brought or brings you some life riches. Now with that bell tolled, we must accumulate our best graphics, tech and art list of the year, along with my long running 40 years of Pixels look back, nostalgically to 1984 and what laid under our trees that glorious year, and the best VR title I enjoyed in 2024. Chapters below for those that want instant gratification, but let's get started at number 8. The 80s and 90s delivered a vast swathe of epic characters, stories and IPs, as the modern corporate world calls them at least, and Starship Troopers was a gory sci-fi favourite from director Paul Verhoeven with a similar European black comedy satirical tone, such as the great Monty Python, Blackadder, Red Dwarf and of course Robocop and Total Recall et al. From the same director. Communism under the guise of democracy moniker, derision of the imposing authority, capitalism, etc, etc. Arrowhead, a small Stockholm-based self-startup in 2008, was so enamoured with the Starship Troopers tale, their first Helldivers game is all based on the exact same elements enjoyed in this new game, which is largely a remake, except now it is fully focused on a 4-player squad-based online experience in 3D. This sequel to that 2015 PS3, Vita, PS4 and PC release is powered by the same and now discontinued BitSquid engine or Stingray when it was purchased by Autodesk and integrated into their developer suite of tools such as the popular 3D Maya. The Swedish developers continued that same Starship Troopers tone, splatting bugs and likely friends at times with friendly fire on, again like the movies, always leave your helmet on. The PC and PS5 version do not differ greatly, but on the technical front the decisions made really highlight the scope within modern hardware and the over-reliance many place on the engine version or even make, keeping themselves within a small 120-ish team using their own technology and being focused on drastically improving all aspects of their core game design on far better hardware has delivered a solid, impressive and above all successful game for them. So successful in fact, they had their own technical issues at launch and then Sony created some further ones which were quickly receded. Nevertheless, what shipped and is still popular now has sucked a great deal of our time and continues to evolve since its launch earlier this year, as they can devote all their time and resources as required by owning and supporting their own technology. They have incorporated far more realistic PBR materials, improved lighting, excellent particle and lighting effects, dynamic gameplay, dense horde AI, procedural environmental destruction, all at 60 FPS even on consoles. Arrowhead proved that adage, the suit does not maketh the man, or is that a bad workman and his tools? Anyway, the point is, with such a relatively outdated engine that predates the current generation consoles, modern GPUs and even DirectX 12 and Steam Deck's Proton, which it runs under all of these with no issues, it highlights a subject I have discussed many times before, in that people and teams make games, not hardware, engines or APIs. Placing these two games side by side, many would surmise, including big tech channels and sites, this must be a brand new modern engine, obviously. It's not the case here at all. The team likely spent a great deal of time, effort and skill to drag, tweak, adapt and kicking and screaming their engine to deliver on their aims, and I'm sure tales will be told of the pain and limits this placed on them. But the reality is a small independent team like Arrowhead can do this as they are not shareholder and market driven, and they are not awaiting the collective updates that may or may not come from a commodity based engine such as Unreal or Unity. Instead, they are free to adapt, shoehorn, hack and bodge to their heart's content, all with a focus on their own aims and not external and largely insignificant areas that can and do affect many other developments, my own non-game development career included. As such, due to the effort this would have been, the passion they have, the quality of the final results, all done with their own bespoke engine and technology, they deserve the success achieved and a slot in my best technology list. Arrowhead, we salute you.
Additional reinforcement funding approved.
Another indie team hits my list, but this time children's storybooks, magical adventures and Unreal Engine are at the heart of it all, UE4 2.7 to be precise. The Plucky Squire is a superb mix of fixed lighting, depth of field, art, shadows, and it looks like something from Tony Hart's Morph Show meets Pixar's Toy Story. It really takes you back to the days of old as being a child playing in your bedroom, imagining all these toys and things could come to life, and that was the team's original intention. Technically and artistically, the game is excellent, mixing a complete shift of camera, control, combat on 2D and 3D objects, which generally looks and works superbly and seamlessly throughout play. This seamless connection of both worlds and the stark contrast of bright, simple pastel colours juxtaposed with photorealistic acrylic paints, bugs and protractors between worlds impresses consistently. It mixes up retro styles of games, 2D platform, simple word puzzles to defender-like shoot-em-ups and punch-out style fights. The storybook progression is so well integrated, almost like a modern comic zone with Mr. Men art style. I never shook the feeling of how good Codemasters Micro Machines remake would look using this superb art design quality and overall technical delivery. The game is driven by art, unique ideas, confident and technically proficient control of Unreal Engine. It's a small team that have learned their craft from Nintendo and overall the joy of gaming, and you can't help shake the feeling this feels like a game Nintendo could have made. Paper Mario et al. It's made for and with kids in mind, and it could be tougher overall for more involved gameplay, but the reason it makes my list is the fact that such a small team has delivered such high quality and without the need to use ray tracing or other technical features just to tick a box. They've actually delivered on all those aims with a relatively older UE4 engine, and it still looks and works as well as it does. The team could certainly continue onwards and upwards, but as it stands right now, the Plucky Squire is a standout title for 2024 and a worthy number 7 on my list. They say there's no such thing as bad publicity, and in the case of Stellar Blade and its South Korean developer Shift Up, this has proven true. A relatively small studio have taken the aging Unreal Engine 4 again here, showing like many others that high quality current gen graphics do not require ray tracing, UE5 or such to impress and grab your attention. Eyes up here, guys. Project Eve changed into Stellar Blade, but the design cues have remained steadfast within this 4-year development cycle. Sekiro meets Bayonetta come near Automoto-infused gameplay, sprinkled with a Devil May Cry visual and audio style. Taking Unreal Engine 4 as their base, without needing to write and roll their own, the team have a strong grasp on the technology, art and aims. Right from the opening introduction, we can see the game ramps up the cinematic quality that impresses often. Character models, physics-based hair, bodies and combat, PBR materials, clean artistic design, vast open maps, distinct and fluid enemies, combat weapons, and a wardrobe ample enough to make Jar Jar Gabor jealous. The skin rendering and muscle, fat and deformation element is worthy of praise and attention, and not just for ogling at, but as a technical achievement, with Stella herself, but also the enemies and NPCs benefiting from the quality and skill. From the chosen oracle like sentient cyborg to the hulking half-monkey boss and more, they all have a convincing mix of cybernetic machines mixed with organic matter. Particles and lighting also impress with great use of motion blur, particle effects, sound design and mixing, delivering a solid and high pedigree throughout for such a relatively new studio. Scenery is destructible, buildings collapse, canisters explode and enrich the world throughout your playtime, making the game feel more than just skin deep. Completed by an extensive set of modes from 30 to 60 FPS with a decent PSSR implementation on PS5 Pro that now supplements the performance, balanced and resolution modes of the base PS5. And here is where the game's use of TAAU and its core rendering and AA choices can wobble a little, with even the native 4K mode having a high degree of subpixel shimmer and flicker greatly improved in that PSSR PS5 Pro mode. But the lower balance mode is the best. The slightly softer and more TAA heavy image does at least remain more consistent and stable on hair, shadows and alpha effects over all of the modes. However, the combat is where the game shines the brightest, enhanced by the superb animation, variety and physically focused movement and world these happen within. Stringing combos together, camera swooping in for a special or power move as you grind down the power gauge and chop them up is always fun, skill-based, dynamic and explosive to play and even watch. It may not move the genre forward, but the consistent quality, rendering skill and fluid gameplay for a team as new to big console development as this it certainly puts its best foot forward. I mean best.
What is your craft?
My craft is death.
Saber Interactive have stood fast in the role your own technology states. While many around fall into the simpler, cheaper, off-the-peg engine of so many with Unreal Engine 5, the Swarm engine has good pedigree, and with a classic series from my youth in Warhammer 40k, here the team have delivered a solid game that is true to the Space Marine lore, but delivers on vast swarms of enemies, physics-based gameplay using Havoc and large open maps, PBR materials, and both 30 and 60 FPS across Series X, PS5, and even the Pro got a recent patch that boosted the game's base resolution by over 2 times using PSSR, offering 4K and 1440p outputs, bringing the quality close to the PC version on a higher end machine using DLSS. The game does heavily rely on CPU outputs, and some of the SSR artifacts can be an issue, but overall the art really shines here with such a rich, evocative world, style and steampunk influence aesthetic to draw from, mixed with solid and explosive combat, great use of particles, gore and visceral execution. It feels accurate to that lore and heritage of 40k. Large open areas, hordes of AI, swarms of enemies to kill with dismemberment and persistent bodies splayed across the battlefield, a variety of scenes and set pieces to enjoy means it hits again and again on both gameplay, story, visual and surprise beats. Cutscenes and models are the weakest point, but story and characters progress often on the stick, which is always the best way to achieve that connection if possible. So these weaker points are never a glaring problem. By having and pushing their own tech forward, the team have crafted each element of their aims: online integrated multiplayer and single player story, varied enemies, rich dense worlds, physically based materials, heavy physics integration, tactile and tactical combat mixing gun, melee, weapon and superpowers. You feel like a hulking, heroic and legendary figure in this world revered by normal folk as you stride past, and stride into the vast and impossible odds. And they're all stacked against you, but you start to believe your own hype, which manages to capture the feel of the board game vibes perfectly, which is only possible due to the fluidity of combat, your stature, weapons, and the atmosphere, sound, art, visuals, and story within. With such an obvious passion for the source material, high quality design, strong technical delivery, and a consistent quality and delivery of varied combat, hordes and weapons, which concentrates all efforts on the design aims and nothing is present without offering value. The engine may not be the newest, the team may not be the biggest, but the results speak loudly for themselves, and I hope they continue to roll their own into the future. A more than worthy number 5.
That cursed gate is in our way.
Then let us remove it.
The controls must be nearby. Soldiers, to your work!
Team Asobi have consistently managed to capture the joy, ingenuity, excitement and creativity of the mid-90s days of 3D emerging gameplay. From the PS4 DualShock 4, PSVR 1 and now twice on PlayStation 5, they've pushed forward in gameplay design, player engagement and technology with a strong grip on the past. This is even more reflective of one of the best games, and rightfully so, many players' best games of 2024, mine included. Now across each level, world, section and new power you gain, it constantly surprises, improves and impresses, with the only studio I feel could go toe to toe with Nintendo's best. But it's not only the captivating gameplay, but in the symbiotic blend of hardware and software technology they so seamlessly and effortlessly infuse into the game. Although it has a clean, simple, almost Sonic Adventure-like artistic style, the game's assets, characters, animations, materials, and even draw distance is one of superb quality throughout. It uses high-quality lighting, both direct and indirect, with dynamic point and spotlights, including high-quality shadows from these and the sun bounces off sand, water with GI and caustics. Although many are baked, the results are no less impressive. Alongside the excellent PBR materials, art and clean style, it leaves you immersed and impressed. But animation and physics are the highest point. Each world, enemy, bot and even rock comes alive as you move throughout. Like any 90s platformer, idle animations are smooth and emotive, enemies have physical tells, weight and physicality is portrayed as you hit, swing or bounce onto something. Physics and the core physicality of everything here is the standout, from the rubber duck demo homage pool, procedural glass destruction, water, buoyancy, slicing objects with your laser, thousands of instant objects with weight and collision that interact with you, bob and float on the water, and even use water to enlarge your character like a sponge and then expel it as it puts out fires. This then interacts with the geometry realistically, running through grooves, dripping off roofs and pooling on the floor. Each world has a fully believable physics model applied that feels so old school and yet modern, with a clear tech demo like vibes of old 16 and 32-bit glory days. In fact, it is the most physics-based game I have played in years, bar none, and I applauded the team on my review with their focus on the physics model in the game over just graphics, which improves and even creates the gameplay within. It stands proud and high in my list, as it does all this at a locked 60 FPS, and it never loses sight of being a game at all times. Simply out of this world. As long-time viewers know, I've been playing and covering VR since the early days. Yes, back to the halcyon 90s days of UK virtuality, we have come a long way. And I've seen and felt the format evolve over that time since 2013 to now. But the main benefit VR offers is levels of immersion and experiences like the old arcades in the late 80s and 90s used to aim for. A classic movie in the 80s was Aliens, and this forms the basis for my best VR title in 2024 that I have played. Set between Alien and Aliens, we are on a planet that is LV-426 in all but name. And it runs on Unreal Engine 5 for an American developer Survivos. Now, from a technical perspective, it's not breaking new ground, but it has some nice features such as Niagara particle system for sparks, xenomorphs, etc., contact hardening style shadows for hands and objects, decent dynamic light sources and fog volumes crucial for that genuine alien look, and retro appropriate VDU terminals complete with quick shot joysticks to access menus, and the sound design and atmosphere is off the charts.
Biometrics mismatch. Security has been notified.
Hostiles. Control.
Emergency lockdown suspended. Please wait until motor pool purge is complete before entering the facility.
Damn it! Why so loud? That just rang the dinner bell for any xenomorph in shouting distance.
Purge complete.
Now, the motion sensor is one of the most iconic visual audio elements in movies, and here that sound as it pings out an object getting closer and closer to your location is pure gaming gold. Whether inside the room or not, the game captures the feel of isolation that was so well delivered in Creative Assembly's classic, but in VR, it takes on a whole new slant. Much of this is the excellent and tactile interaction. Everything has to be grabbed, connecting power cables to reroute doors, injecting yourself with energy or serums, hooking your PDA into the terminals to access the system, to pulling the tracker off your shoulder. Even reloading your Magnum is all done via physical movements, adding a real-life tension to every encounter. Torchlight adds a better view of what lies in the darkness, but the game's mix of that desolated and partially destroyed base, heavy use of sound effects, be that the ping of the tracker, the unmistakable gunfire of the pulse rifle, to the high-pitched scream of the xenomorph as you bleed them out. This feels like you're trapped here with no way home. I was hooked, and much of that is my love of the source, but the passion and quality from the devs is clear. Not all is great, the main character being a little too cavalier and dismissive in places that, in my opinion, can impact the tension the game creates, and the encounters with the aliens themselves can start to become a distraction and even into an annoyance level rather than adding to that atmosphere later on. I wish they had mixed up more variety here and pacing, which would have aided the overall feel. But ultimately, this was a super virtual reality experience I enjoyed from beginning to end over the Christmas break, and I wholeheartedly recommend it to PSVR 2, Rift, Vive, and sometime next month, I believe, Meta Quest players who love some acid for blood alien adventure. I look forward to more in this series and hopefully an even bigger budget to push harder on the tech, experience, and interaction. But overall, I loved every minute of it.
Joy.
Another new team hits my list, and Chinese Game Science first game makes one hell of an entrance, kicking off with one of the most enthralling, visually stunning, and most importantly playable starts to any game. Clearly more God of War than Dark Souls inspired. It sets up for one of the oldest, greatest stories from Chinese literature, with a fresh slant for us older Westerners of a certain vintage who likely know it best from the iconic 70s Japanese TV show Monkey Magic, colloquially speaking. Now, younger audiences know it as Dragon Ball Z, as Monkey travelled from China to India, Trippy Carter, Pigsy, Sandy in tow. This band of highly unlikely heroes and heroines captured multiple generations of imaginations. And here Game Science have reimagined that same story into a state-of-the-art technical and artistic powerhouse. Or is that roundhouse? On PC and console. They started with UE4 but quickly moved to 5 and made excellent but judicious use of the engine's tech toolkit, eschewing VSMs due to the abundant foliage within the game's art design and the huge cost, tailoring and issues this can present. Nanite is used, however, to create this dense, detailed and largely seamless world that scales as you explore. Paired with Lumen, and in particular on NVIDIA GPUs with DLSS, ray reconstruction and frame generation, it can look simply magnificent and run incredibly smoothly. Maxed out, it has not only full reflections and global illumination, but dynamic caustics, Niagara particles, which create wind through trees, dancing magical effects, and with dense volumetric fog, some of the best magical effects this side of Industrial Light and Magic. Character models are incredibly detailed, vivid and well animated, with a mix of motion capture, keyframe and more solutions. Physics play a role in cloth, hair, fire, fights and motion, which just adds to this rich, lush and dangerous world. Photogrammetry helped create such a striking title even on PlayStation 5, and it looks incredible with a general match for PC's high settings, sans the RT lighting, higher hair spline system and ray trace reflections. Even 60 FPS is offered, which uses FSR3 frame generation in its performance mode, but the new PS5 Pro patch can lock at a smooth 40 FPS in that 4K mode and almost a locked 45 in that balance mode, but PC is obviously a step above on a good rig. It can stand shoulder to shoulder with the best, and although it had its issues at launch, in reality, much bigger, more experienced teams have delivered lesser quality, resolution and or performance on the same engine. This could be made by Santa Monica or Sucker Punch et al, and I would not argue it is simply a magnificent looking, playing and crafted game, and it should shake up the industry how good Chinese teams are in such a short space of time. I cannot wait for the next one to drop from the clouds.
But oh yes, I always knew. One day you shall return.
1984 was one of the biggest years for games. It marked the beginning of the end for arcades as we had more and more computers that could deliver similar games in your bedroom or living room. A huge swathe of games and genres were created in this year though. Joystick killing or button bashing athletics in Konami's track and field or hyper sports. At home, the UK hero of the day got his own decathlon, Daley Thompson. No relation. But Ocean never missed a chance to jump on a bandwagon, and 2 at Once was unmissable. It was an okay game and certainly filled a void, but we finally got the Konami port later, and our joysticks were never quite the same again.
Ghostbusters!
Licensing was growing ever more popular and commonplace, and none bigger in '84 than Activision's Ghostbusters game on the now dominant C64 and its plastic padded case here in Europe, now famously built on the back of David Crane's own Car Wars game to fit the movie and made in a matter of weeks. It was not a great game even then, but the digitised speech and famous soundtrack helped make them even more money, whilst it also helped them kill off the US console and gaming market over the next 12 months, alongside Atari and others. Two-player competitive action was the big growth genre though, from Pit Stop 2 offering early split-screen racing revolution action at home to classic slapstick spy-em-up, spy vs spy, to the longest running genre even today. Two-player fighters and even scrolling brawlers both started in 1984, with Karate Champion and Kung Fu Master respectively. They set the world alight, and without these two iconic and genre-defining titles, we would not have the likes of Ya Kung Fu, in Japan only at the same year, and later Way of the Exploding Fist, Virtua Fighter, Tekken, and the king of all fighters, Street Fighter 2. Ditto Kung Fu Master, which gave us Double Dragon, Renegade, Final Fight, Streets of Rage, Turtles in Time, and yes, even Golden Axe, amongst thousands more. Now another game the genre owes a debt to was in parallel development with these, Karateka from Jordan Mechner. Yet another standout for the year, delivering the first rotoscoped game animation, just started or lent heavily into the merging games and movies area. Although released on the Apple II, I played it on the better C64 port the year later, and this was head and shoulders the best graphics and sound even on the little Apple II. Moving briefly to movies, we had one of the most pioneering video games meets films crossovers in the majestic and largely forgotten classic The Last Starfighter. Being a young schoolboy at the time into games, music, coding, martial arts and sci-fi, it felt made for me. It still holds up today and was one of the first movies to have large chunks of CGI sections in the faux arcade and space battles. A terrible arcade also launched, but the film is and remains a key memory of my youth and more than one viewing at the flicks, and a clear trendsetter in what would become the norm decades later on the visual and technical side.
Wait a minute, when did the hangar go up?
I told you! When Zor attacked!
And where were the starfighters?
In the hangar!
How many are left?
Including yourself?
Yeah!
One!
But on the visual technical gaming front in the arcades, Kung Fu Master was one of the best, but a certain Mark Cerny made his big Atari debut this year with his phenomenal Marble Madness, a game that was controlled via trackball, used height maps and anti-aliasing for its 3D geometry look, incorporated physics into the world, and Marble you controlled with weight, inertia and gravity, and was as forward-looking as anything else around this time. Well, aside one, Elite was and remains the most mind-boggling, large and complex game ever made that seems years ahead of the host hardware. Seeded from a number we can gain galaxies to explore, planets to cargo, pirates to fight and ranks to make. Vector graphics, complex strategy gameplay and unique gameplay and style, it even came with a novella to extend your connection with this universe whilst in bed. It was my longest played game then and years later, but only at school in mid-84 for around 2 months on the BBC Micro. The computer was great, but it was far too rich for my blood and family. Luckily, my cheaper Acorn got a version which, although now fully black and white with some of the cutbacks, still delivered all the greatness along with that C64 version in 85. I never seemed to tire of it, which is true even now, as I still own my original Acorn copy here, given to me by a girlfriend at the time and inscribed inside. Now technically it wins the overall race on home computers in 84, but another classic blew me away and fought for my time, and it grabbed you from the off with an iconic opening.
Another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever.
Speech at home or in arcades was rare, but this quality was mind and ear boggling. Impossible Mission really amplifies how original, skillful and addictive games and developers were then. Simple puzzle based platform gameplay, mixing Bond meets 60s show Mission Impossible, searching rooms for clues, travelling on lifts, super smooth animation, something common of the C64, running and somersaults across all those pesky robots aimed to destroy you from the evil Bond villain, always had the last laugh. But for me, this was one of the best games in 1984, and even now looks and plays and certainly sounds incredible.
Destroy him, my robot.
But what about you? What were you playing in 84? In the arcades, at home, or even on some consoles? The Atari VCS was now completely dead in my house, and in fact, I think we'd actually given it away at this point. You never tend to sell things back then, and I'd fully moved to computers and never looked back for years later. But what were you playing on console, PC, and arcades? Leave your comments down below, but let's go back to the final two. Pulling these lists together is always tough, and getting the number 1 and 2 was a very tough call to make. In pure visual, film, offline CGI attaining levels, then Hellblade 2 from Ninja Theory is top of the tree, surpassing all of the games, including the benchmark from last generation in the order 1886, Now Gen in The Last of Us 2, or Cyberpunk, and even my number 1 yet to come. The closest thing is the Matrix demo, but this is head and shoulders above that. The reasons are multiple. Minutiae on small facial movement with incredible dense rigs, motion captured animation with superb blends, photogrammetry and material quality that is at times on par with movie production, high quality and artistically driven lights, clean and high resolution post effects such as depth of field, motion blur, lens flare, subsurface scattering, physics, cloth, body, skin deformation, eye parallax, cinematography, particles, incredible dense geometry and hardly any faults, with a stunning consistent quality that achieves the holy grail at points of crossing that uncanny valley. Seamless and vast streaming shots from one locale and time to another, water physics, gory combat, ray trace reflections with nanite micro polygons. It really packs in those tech bullet points, but it uses them with aplomb. I struggle to praise it more than to say it was the first game in years for me have to really look at certain points for signs that this was real time before I was even sure. Helping and pausing in the photo mode is one of the biggest giveaways, but overall the quality here is absolutely stunning. Although consoles are 30 FPS, the quality on Series S is still impressive for the hardware. It's like the VHS version that is to the Blu-ray of the Series X and the Ultra HD Blu-ray of high-end PC. That can exceed 60 FPS with some memory stutter at times, but it still scales well and is a pure powerhouse to show off Unreal Engine 5, Nanite, Lumen and MetaHuman. I doubt any team in this generation will meaningfully better the aim and quality of both photorealism in characters and scene rendering we see here. Both with or without Unreal Engine 5, it really is that good, and on that aspect I place it as the new benchmark for this generation in that regard. Simply magnificent production quality, consistency and delivery here. Ninja by name and by nature. A very close second place, but no less worthy. Indiana Jones was an early influence on the blossoming gaming landscape in the early 80s, from Atari VCS, arcade, Commodore, and in the end, Lucasfilm games in the classic graphic adventures, including his own. A decade later, id Tech became the de facto PC engine in the mid-90s. No, not that one. This one. And even over 30 years later, it still remains at the forefront of PC scalability and new features. Machine Games have set out on their own crusade with a spur of id Tech 7 going by the Motor moniker. And motor it sure can, even on consoles as low as the Series S. With 8GB of usable RAM, low-level GPU, it still targets and largely succeeds in delivering high-quality visuals at 60 FPS. The passion for the source is clear with the superb Raiders remake. Now, I did wish all of it was on the sticks, but I love the accuracy and shot-for-shot remake they did here.
Although ray tracing is core, even on Series S, the launch version was patched later to get this more in line with the PC low RT preset, and it looks superb. Light bounce on foliage, pixel precise AO, and a rich, believable world to gallivant within. But the enhanced full path trace version, specifically in dense jungle and areas with reflective surfaces, interiors with sunlight bleeding in, does leap up dramatically over the base ray traced version. The core lighting though is of pure cinema quality, with Spielberg-esque light across eyes, faces, lens flare, soft diffused light, skin tones with subsurface scattering, with tone mapping and vibrant oranges, whites and blues, all used within many light sources. It delivers both the visual quality, comedy and a strong story. Complemented with excellent voice acting, Troy Baker does a commendable Harrison Ford impersonation, but all of the actors are equally strong, including Giannetti Lombardi. The character models, hair spline technology, good facial bone rigs, and expressions really improve these sequences. Although not up to Hellblade 2 levels, they are exceptional quality paired with superb materials, lighting, rigs, and composition, and they run at 60 FPS as a baseline, even on the Series S. The world within is as big, if not bigger character. Dense foliage, rich architecture from the Vatican to the jungles of Peru, to Egyptian pyramids, and even snow-frozen ships. It looks, sounds, feels, and plays like an Indiana Jones movie. And the best one at that, since the original and only trilogy we ever needed.
No ticket.
The game does not excel in any one area, but what it does is deliver a high and consistent quality across all main aspects and all formats, and it's technically very proficient. To look this good, run this smooth, scale this well, and deliver great art, design, gameplay, and story, it manages to achieve many things in one, least of which was me actually enjoying an indie story again. But also with Machine Games and id Tech, they have topped my list of best technical, art and graphics of 2025, simply because they achieved the most balanced harmony across those core pillars, and a worthy winner for Xbox, id Tech, and most importantly of all, the entire Machine Games team. Indy and his father would be proud. So we've reached the end, but what did I miss? Well, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was certainly an impressive and gorgeous game. It improved in scale and scope over the previous entry and made good use of PlayStation 5, if not even better on the Pro, with PSSR at 60 FPS, being a revelation in quality, models, location and cinematics, are all excellent. But a lot of that was down to the team's own decisions, but consistency, textures and the 60 FPS mode had some poor choices and issues which ultimately cost it a shot at the slot in my list. A similar tale with Star Wars Outlaws, pushing ray tracing on consoles at 30 and 60 FPS with Massive's own Snowdrop engine remains impressive, and again improved on PS5 Pro now in that new recently released PSSR mode, but again many issues including performance crept in, and even PC suffers, though applauded for a full suite of FSR, DLSS and XeSS support out of the box. But the world quality, bugs, foliage and lack of wow factors generally from the game left it outside my top 8 for the year. Tekken 8 did sit as a possible one at one point in my list due to its excellent character models, muscle and fat deformation, excellent and industry-leading resolution scaling, light and material quality, which will certainly be the benchmark for Sega to exceed with its upcoming Virtua Fighter return, but ultimately it just missed out, along with a few others. But that is the end of my list for 2024, my best VR title that I enjoyed, and a look back at 1984 and how innovative that year was. If you like what I do here, remember I am self-funded and independent. This was up very early for Patreons, and you can join me on my Patreon for a few dollars or pounds a month, which allows you to get early access to this and exclusive access to content, give me questions in my database videos, and also shape the quality of work that I do. This was late, and some of that was down to the upcoming work I've got, and I was in Las Vegas at the beginning of this year, covering CES 25 with Nvidia, and therefore there's a lot of work coming up on that and the new card that launches sometime later. So if you like what I do, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, leave all your thoughts and feedback on this list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? But for now, I'm out, but I'll see you very soon on the next one.
Wait. You are not a priest.